Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, please subscribe. I'd really love that. If you're returning, how you doing? What we're going to talk about right now are some tips and tricks to survive the next Great Depression. We need to be ready, my friends, okay? Because have you ever sat down with your grandparents, your great-grandparents, even your parents that might have gone through the Great Depression and just listened to their stories on how they survived the Great Depression? It's fascinating, really. If you have, you've probably heard and learned of the many ways of coping if a certain financial catastrophe were to happen again. Things seem to be getting worse every single year. Maybe you don't have a family member who is still alive who went through those or similar tough times. You may have no personal knowledge of what to expect and where to start as you try to be self-reliant and prepare for financial challenges. So I'm going to give you some tips, okay, from survivors of the Great Depression on how to survive the Greater Depression. And these tips are being shared with you regarding on how their families survived the darkest of times. The first one is to use every resource. Now, our grandparents who survived the Depression found ways of using every resource that was available to them. Today, when a pair of shoes become worn, we throw them out, we go buy new ones, right? Well, during an economic collapse, you might not have that option. You may find yourself preserving resources by repairing those shoes instead of buying new shoes. The next one is to steer clear from debt. Those who have been through recessions would advise you to stay out of debt. If you are already in over your head, but plan together to try and get out as quickly as you possibly can. The lenders at big banks might be more lenient right now. When the economy takes a hit, they're going to be less forgiving because you won't be the only one looking for that relief. Do all that you can to prevent having to file for bankruptcy. If you have a loan on your home, make sure your payments are made on those mortgages, since that's a sign that you are sincerely trying. And you don't want to have to put your shelter at risk, ever. Even though you may be feeling some financial pressure, please do your best to get back on top and do not panic. The next one is to start saving. Having money tucked away in anticipation of a financial emergency and making sure you add to it as often as possible will be huge. Start saving any money that you can now so you're better prepared for when a crisis hits. There are all sorts of financial instruments to consider, from bank savings, certificates of deposit, commercial and government bond market, mutual funds, or even the stock market, if you feel comfortable in doing so. The stock market has seen some hits, so I would stay away from industries that show systemic risk. You hear a lot about crypto, right? I'd steer clear until that market is more stable and not subject to the scams that we are hearing about all the time. The government's financial regulators really have not taken on that market at this point, so buyer beware. The next thing is learn how to improvise. During the Great Depression, many Americans had to learn how to adapt and do so quickly. You shouldn't be pretending that life is going to run the same or as smoothly as it has most of your life. Putting a plan in place and being willing and able to improvise any way that you can will provide very helpful for your success in making it through these tough times. Learning to improvise may include learning how to sew your own clothes, cooking more meals at home, finding new ways to recreate and vacation, and more. Be creative. You very well could surprise yourself. The next thing is to build a community. Don't try and do things on your own when the whole world comes crashing down around you. If you don't have people in your life who can help pick you up and work to get you back on your feet, it's time to break out of that bubble and get more involved with your own financial future. Have a community of family and friends that share a common goal of encouraging and helping others will have a huge impact on morale. You will need family members to help you make it through financial hard times. You can also learn to rely on financial advisors, your co-workers who are homeowners and family members like you. Your spiritual advisor may also help provide the resources you need to get through the difficult stretches. Be careful about providing personal and financial information to strangers, of course. Our culture is full of scams and people committing fraud in their effort to take your money or your property. If ever in doubt, follow your gut and go somewhere else to put your hard-earned money and your resources to work. The next thing is go to wherever your opportunities are. When the Great Depression happened, many people were willing to travel wherever they thought there was going to be new opportunities. Have you ever heard of the book, The Grapes of Wrath? It details the lives of families who moved from the Midwest to the southern states to California, seeking better times and better circumstances. Yes, many found new challenges, but others were able to grow in their new environment. And this goes along with improvising, which I mentioned earlier. If you lost your job and you cannot afford your home and you hear that there's work in other locations, then you would be better and willing to consider to make that change. We can't get ahead by waiting for the next fiscal stimulus from the government, because it's not going to happen. We need to be self-reliant and look out for ourselves. The next thing is depending on one source of income during an economic uncertainty might not be enough. Over the past few decades, many Americans had to take on part-time jobs just to keep food on the table. You should consider looking into training programs for new employment opportunities. With all the dialogue in Washington about government spending on infrastructure, highways, railroads, bridges, low-income housing, etc., 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 you may find yourself fitting into different industries and learning new skill sets. If you've thought about going back to school or attending a trade school, now might be the time to follow your dream. You can always rely on others to fix and repair things during a financial collapse, but you also won't be able to rely solely on the supermarkets to provide meat and other staples for your meals. Learn how to fix or sew your own clothing. Put meat, fruit, and veggies back on the menu through gardening and fishing and hunting. Learn basic survival skills. Take control of your own disaster recovery efforts and learn how to stretch it a bit. When money is gone, you may have to turn to your possessions and use them as bartering tools. If you have valuable basic necessities that people need to survive, that's a huge bargaining chip that is in your favor. Now, I talked about survival skills, but one thing to consider is putting your own skills to work as bartering chips. Maybe you can trade what you know and do with someone who has what you need and vice versa, you know? So the next thing is to waste nothing. Have you ever noticed that your grandparents hardly wasted anything? They learned how to do without. So when they had a little of something, they made sure to put it to good use. You see, people all around us who feel that they need the latest gadgets, particularly like new iPhones and this and that. Maybe you can wait for the next generation of the iPhone or Android so you can still have access to Twitter and Facebook. The challenge with feeling the need for the latest and the greatest is we can find ourselves in the middle of a global financial crisis, and foreign countries, including the countries that are our trading partners, won't be manufacturing many commodities, including those phones and those other little gadgets. With the conflicts going on and the tensions elsewhere in the world, nothing is guaranteed to be available. So learn to be patient or just do without. The Federal Reserve is trying to get our nation inflation levels down, but prices still remain high on so many things, including the food that we eat every single day. The prime rate announced in New York and interest rates at the Bank of England in London continue to go up. It is costing farmers and ranchers more produce to produce our food. So the cost is being passed down to us. A secret to stretching out your meals is by adding cheap protein to your diet. Eggs, beans, rice, they are cheap solutions that you can add to your meals to make them more filling. And you can even add something like preserving dozens of meals to have just in case we end up living through something like the Great Depression again, but this time it'll be called the Greater Depression. Have you noticed how your grandmom had a stockpile of toothpaste or toilet paper? Well, you know she does that for a good reason, right? Stocking up on supplies we use every single day, while there is a good deal, will help you better prepare for a crisis and not have to go without. Having a garden through an economy dry spell will go a long way in providing another source of getting your next meal. Farm work has always been a way of life, even for our great-grandparents. We may need to rely on the skills of that way of life again. Preserving food through canning is something that is dying out today, unless, of course, you're in the prepper community. With the right preservatives and canning supplies, building a stock for your family to fall back on is a really great option. There may be times when purchasing canned goods at the grocery store is no longer an option, and you'll need your own processing of food to make it through these tough times. The next thing is to search for different methods of transportation. Gas might become way too expensive or hard to come by during a collapse. Being able to take your bike to work might be the only way you can afford to get there. For the time being, using public transportation may provide a chance for you to save a chunk of money. We forget how much it costs to have a car in the driveway available for our daily use. We often just think a car's cost is only the car payment, but we sometimes forget about fuel, insurance, maintenance, taxes. They're all part of the cost of having car ownership. An alternative is to also consider carpooling so you can share in the cost with family, friends, neighbors, and coworkers. So the next thing is everyone in the family worked. The Great Depression was not friendly to those who were affected. It put young and old alike to work, and this means the kids found ways of making money to help support their families, and the elderly didn't get to retire as early as they had hoped to. They simply worked until they were not able to. So people also kept their dignity by working jobs that nobody would want to do. They didn't care about what others thought of them in their occupation. They might mean swallowing your pride and working at a fast food restaurant or getting dirty picking up trash. There is no right or wrong way to earn money as long as it's legal and has few personal harm risks. The next thing is to enjoy a simple life. The men and women of the 1930s that survived the economic collapse were given a new perspective on life. People learned how to enjoy life, even when they had to go without. Families found joy in doing things together, and they made do. And the next one is to keep morale high. Many lives tragically ended when things got too hard, and you have to find ways of keeping each other's moral high and in any way that you possibly can. Take hikes, bike rides, walks, watching TV, reading, and other simple things to fill in your free time and make the most of your circumstances. Visiting extended family, calling old friends, going window shopping, and doing those fun, simple things like they did back then when they didn't have much. And lastly, remember to live. If a crisis like an economic collapse were to happen again, it would be hard not to put all of your worries and effort into simply surviving day to day. Somehow, through it all, you would have to find and remember how to live. Laughing and crying and dancing with your spouse or playing with your children can never be taken from you, only if you allow it. And just because the value of the dollar has died does not mean that your family's lives should die with it. All right, guys, I'm out of here. I will see you in the next one. You stay safe, you stay positive, you keep prepping, and as always, fear less. Ciao.